Hi everybody, welcome to Island Outdoors 1. Today we're gonna take a look at the Schrade Walden U.S.A. 880 KON-KAV 3-blade Stockman. So this is the first in my series of videos on Schrade USA knives. And what we have here is the Schrade Walden 880 KON-KAV. And it's a 3-blade Stockman. And this one I think was made in the early 60s. And this model goes back to at least 1953, maybe earlier, and it was discontinued in 1977. Let me take it out of the plastic. They came in these plastic tubes back in the day. You can see it says Schrade Walden, everlastingly sharp. And I'm not 100% sure that this is the tube that originally came with this knife, but if it didn't, it was one just like this. I bought this knife used on eBay, and I don't know if you can read any of that, but the inside card tells you how to sharpen your knife. They included that with their knives back then, and it had a guarantee. You can see this one came from Ellensville, New York. But very nice 3-blade Stockman, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it before we pick it up and look it over. These were made of bone before 1958, and then the switch to Delrin plastic was made. And I'm pretty sure that this is the Delrin version. I almost think the bone ones are a little more luxurious, and you can see almost a grain to the bone pattern, but this Delrin is very nicely done, and it is a jigged pattern on it. I'm not sure if you'd describe this as a peach seed jigged, but it's close to that. We'll go around the outside a little bit here. See if we can get the shield to show up for you. It has a nickel silver shield that says Schrade on that. And I think the glare from the sun's not letting that come through as good as I'd like, but we have nickel silver bolsters, and we have brass pins holding the covers on, and the spring pin in the middle, or center pin. We have brass liners, and we have double brass liners on this side, much like the Camillus knives. And again, that allows for a little bit more room for the spay blade and sheepfoot blade to fit together in there without too much rubbing. This particular model has pretty good blade centering as far as the main blade and its channel. But this is the model 880 KON-KAV, and you can see it has a concave etching on the blade. It also has a long pull match strike nail neck on there. which is my favorite. I love the gear pattern on that. This is a hollow ground blade, hence the concave name. And I don't know how rare that was for pocket knives back in this time, but a lot of them came with a full flat grind. But this one has a very nice concave grind on it, and I believe, let's see, before 1976, when the grinding process switched to automatic machinery or automated machinery, a lot of the blade grinding process was done by hand, and I'm pretty sure this one was done by hand too. You see there's no sharp transition between the flat of the knife and the hollow grind. It's kind of rounded in here. Right where my fingernail's pointing on that line across the edge there. It's nicely rounded over, and I'm pretty sure that was done by hand. And the swedge on the spine of the knife here at the point, you can tell, or if I turn it slowly, you can see where the hand grinding process was. It's not perfect like a machine ground, but an actual cutler ground that on his machine that he was working on that day, and did it by hand. And here's the back of our blade. Very nice classic clip point blade style with a beautiful hollow grind. And this main blade was polished very nicely. I don't know if it is showing through on the camera here, but compared to the other two, which they kind of look polished, but they have more of a machine polished finish on them. And you can see here, this is our sheep foot blade, flat grind. The only hollow ground blade or concave blade is the main clip point blade. And let's back out a little bit. Here is our spay blade. Again, full flat ground. But this is a beautiful knife. It is considered by some the finest three-blade Stockman knife that Schrade made. They also made the same pattern in the old-timer line, and people generally preferred this one because of its hollow grind and its cutting abilities, which made it very thin behind the cutting edge. But just a beautiful old knife, and I don't believe this one was used, and if it was carried at all, it was very little. But let's show you the blade tang on this one. Let's see if we can pick that up, but it says Schrade Walden, New York, USA. And on the back side of that blade, we have the model number 880. And just beautiful. This is a large Stockman, or senior Stockman, as they would call it. And just a classic design, classic look to it. The colors on this Delrin are very deep, rich browns, transition to some lighter colors on towards the bolsters, and the fit and finish on this knife is beautiful. I think there's only a slightest of gaps between the springs and liners on this. If I held a light up to the back of this, which I actually can do that. I don't know if it'll show on camera, but is that picking up at all? The slightest of gaps between the springs and the liners right there. You can see right in this area. And ideally you don't want any gaps showing there, but that's all that this knife has. And oftentimes I've found that once in a while a little dirt or grit will work in between those and create those, and with a little use or cleaning, that grit will come out and your knife will spring back into a nice tight. Yeah, so a wonderful knife. And I believe this knife does not have pivot pins. I believe it's Swindon key construction, and I'll talk about that particular type of construction in my next video, the 881Y Schrade USA knife. So stay tuned if you'd like to learn about that. But Schrade was one of the only companies to use the Swindon key construction to hold their knives together, as opposed to a pinned nickel silver rod that usually goes through the bolsters. But just a great knife. There was other hologram models with the concave etching, and they were the 863, which was a 3 5/8 inch Whittler, and the 805, which was a 2 3/4 inch Stockman. And I don't have those particular models, but I'm sure they were also as nice as this one is. The closed length on this is 3 7/8 inches. The main blade on this is 3 inches. The spade blade is 2 1/16, and the sheep foot blade is 2 1/4 inches. And this was made in the USA, as I said before. And there are some models out there with real bone handles, and they're even more attractive than this beautiful Delrin handle. But they're substantially more valuable too, I believe. They have the bone handles on them. But yeah, just a beautiful Schrade Walden. Nice example of how they used to do things in the United States when Schrade produced their knives here. So thank you for watching. Glad I could share this with you, and stick around for my next video. See you then.